Give me 10 more minutes, roger that.
Negative. Howard, bring her home.
Okay, set course for 090. Prepare to descend.
The Aviator. The Aviator is a 2004 American epic biographical drama film directed by Martin Scorsese and written by John Logan. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Howard Hughes, who won the Best Actor in 2016 for Academy Award. Other than that, we have Cate Blanchett as Katharine Hepburn and Kate Beckinsale as Ava Gardner. So basically, this film is about Howard Hughes, who was an aviation pioneer and a director of Hells Angels. This film portrays his life from 1927 to 1947, during which time Hughes became a very successful film producer and an aviation magnate, while simultaneously growing more unstable due to severe obsessive compulsive disorder. It starts when Howard's mother asks him to just quarantine himself because of the disease outside the world. After several years later, Howard's become a film producer, and he become more obsessed with the film that he made. And even after the premiere, he still wants to redo the film again because he is not satisfied with the quality. Howard also was an aviation pioneer, and in 1938 he does even break the world record by flying all around the world within 4 days. Howard's OCD problems become worsened day by day after he broke up with his girlfriend called Ava Gardner. He even isolated himself in a room called germ-free zone for about 3 months after got summoned from Brewster for a Senate investigation. At the end of the movie, Howard starts to flashback his childhood life and how loved he is to aviation, and his ambition for success compulsively repeated the phrase the way of the future, repeatedly after having a panic attack in the restroom.
Is Howard Hughes, who has suffered with OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. Okay, Howard was grew up in his clean and concerned family, so that he become more hygienic person, and always worried if he get dirt. Okay, Howard also was grew up as an ambitious person. He is very eccentric and a playboy person. He was shown with dating a different high-profile woman, but his most serious relationship is with Catherine, who is the legendary actress. Okay. Howard also he's an aviation pioneer and the director of the film Hells Angels. Okay, his life became difficult when he was broke up with his girlfriend Catherine. From that, he start isolate himself. He lock himself in the room with no clothes and in mess. Okay. He also start show the OCD behavior when he start repeat the phrase. For example, the phrase come in with the milk. Okay. He also keep repeating spell the quarantine. Okay. He also do some odd behavior, which is he collect his urine in the milk bottle and so on. So it show that the behavior of OCD. Okay. Howard tried to cope his anxiety. He had tried to struggle with his OCD. There are many scenes that show the Howard the Howard that try to cope his OCD. For example, he come out from isolation room and he asked Ava to help himself cleaning up. Okay, next the scene when he forced himself to attend a scenic session. Okay. On that day, he also tried to shake hand with anyone who support him. Okay, what I learned from Howard is his effort to cope his OCD bring a successful, which is he win the session, and he also get the trust back from the society. Not more than that, he also success to make a biggest plane ever made. Okay, so he proved that his illness did not stop him to be a successful person.
Okay, the first scene is Howard begins to direct the movie Hells Angels. After the release of The Jazz Singer, the first partially talking film, Howard becomes obsessed with shooting his film realistically and decides to convert the movie to sound film. Despite the film being a hit, Howard remains unsatisfied with the end result and orders the film to be requeued after its Hollywood premiere. When Howard was directing the movie, Howard wanted the cloud, so he hired the professor to get the cloud, and the cloud had to be. The third is Howard become rigid separation of peace when he had a dinner. Okay, the fourth is Howard did not eat his food after Mayer took the nuts from his plate. The next scene is after he saw the juicy meat on the plate in Kate's lunch family, and he immediately left the room in rush because he felt dirty. Besides, Howard bring his own bar soap to use in public restroom and wash his hand repeatedly until raw and even bleeding. Next, Howard avoid to touch the door knob in the public restroom, instead wait for someone to come in to open. And last from me, Howard hold the microphone with tissue because he thinks that the microphone is dirty.
Then, Howard touched the seat in the theater as if it is very dirty. 11. Established germ-free zone in his house. 12. Howard looked miserable after forcing himself to eat horrible food and drink from the vignette. Printed glass with senator brochure. 13. All Howard's employees should be as clean as wearing gloves while at work, and if his employees are not clean, such as who have dirty nails, Howard Hill fired them. 14. Howard felt insecure about having to deal with people he didn't like, such as shaking hands with enemies. If shaking hands, he would immediately wash his hands with the soap his mother used when they was child. 15. When Howard hated someone, such as his breaking up with his girlfriend, he immediately burned all the clothes the woman has ever touched. He did it because he thought it was all dirty. 16. He would say things over and over again. such as saying, "It is my future," and spoil quarantine, until he had to shoot his own mom because he was worried and depressed over something that wasn't clean. 17. Howard cared about small details, like observing the part of the plan that he thinks is something and constantly directing his employees to keep improving as he wants, just as Howard thinks of the knives in his plan. 18. Howard suffered from excessive fear of germs, so that he think an empty milk bottle and was not wearing any clothes due to his trauma, because his home was searched by FBI.
The causes OCD based on this movie are: firstly, Howard's mother repeated the same words about hygiene when he was a child by saying the word quarantine over and over, that made him afraid of catching illness. Secondly, there is no support when Howard had symptoms OCD. For example, before he broke up with Katharine Hepburn always supported him when he was suffering from OCD symptoms. Thirdly, after a serious plane crash, his symptoms and fears become even more prominent. He even imposed his staff requiring them to wear gloves while preparing his food. Lastly, Howard's home was searched by the FBI because he was accused of embezzling government money in making his plane, and his company threatened to go bankrupt. This caused a great deal of psychological trauma to him, with the men searching his possessions and do a deed throughout his house.
Okay, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder 5th edition categorized OCD and related disorder closely to anxiety disorder. So, the diagnostic criteria for OCD include the presence of obsessions and compulsions. So, what is obsessions and what is compulsions? Okay, obsession are thoughts that occur repeatedly and continually, which the individual view as undesired and destructive that can cause anxiety and distress. Meanwhile, the compulsions are the repeated action or mental steps the individual feels compelled to perform in response to obsessions, such as washing the hair repeatedly. As from the movie, we can see that the actor had excessive hand washing, and also he has his germ-free zone. So we can see that he had the obsession in fear of germs or contaminants, and it produced the compulsions where he tend to have excessive hand washing. The second criteria for OCD is the obsession and compulsion has to be time consuming for at least 1 hour of every day, or it can cause significant impairment in life. For example, Howard Hughes' compulsions are so time consuming where he has the inability to produce a plane on time. So, we can see that Howard Hughes fulfilled this criteria as well throughout the film, particularly towards the end. Hughes is unable to function socially or occupationally in many other aspects of his life. His relationship also disrupted because of OCD. So, the analysis of Howard Hughes' character led to the conclusion that he can be diagnosed with OCD because he fulfilled all of the criteria of OCD. As for the treatment for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, the most effective approach is called exposure erythro prevention, or we call as ERP. ERP is a type of cognitive behavioral therapy. This therapy involves the person with OCD to face with his fears. This type of therapy can be extremely anxiety-provoking initially, but eventually the anxiety starts to wane because the person with OCD learn to face their fears, so that they tend to be calmer with the situation, and the anxiety or the fears starts to wane. As for the treatment from Islamic perspective, the Islamic jurisprudence named as Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah proposed a balanced therapy in order to prevent and treating OCD, such as repentance, increasing worship to Allah, practicing spiritual purification, which is tazkiyatu an-nafsi, and lastly, rationalizing the mind by replacing the negative thoughts into positive thoughts.